"I can't live without a man," said the Apache girl. The farmer let her stay. The sun was dipping behind the jagged peaks of the desert mountains, casting long shadows over the small farm. Dust rose in soft swirls as a warm evening wind moved through the fields. The farm, though humble, was well cared for. A wooden fence surrounded the small plot of land, and beyond it, wild desert stretched as far as the eye could see. Birds were settling down for the night, and the distant howl of a coyote echoed faintly. The farmer, a man in his 40s, was finishing up his day. Desperation. His hands were rough and calloused from years of working the land, tending to livestock, and fixing fences. His face, tanned and lined, carried the quiet weight of solitude. He lived alone. Most of his days were spent in the company of his animals, cows, chickens, and a stubborn old horse that refused to be ridden, and the wide, empty horizon that seemed endless. He liked the quiet, liked the rhythm of farm life, but even in the silence, there was a certain loneliness, a feeling that something was missing. As he walked along the edge of the field, checking the fences one last time, he noticed movement near the tree line at the far end of his land. At first he thought it was just a fox or maybe a desert hare, but as he squinted against the fading sunlight, he realized it was a young girl. She looked small and fragile, her clothes dusty and worn. She was sitting on the ground, hugging her knees, and staring at the ground like she didn't know where to go. Curiosity and concern made the farmer slow his pace. He had seen travelers before, lost hikers and even drifters, but there was something different about this girl. She wasn't just lost. She looked scared and exhausted. He called out softly, "Hey, are you all right?" The girl flinched at first, then slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were dark and wide, full of fear and something else he couldn't quite name. She had the features of an Apache girl, high cheekbones, smooth skin, and hair as dark as the night. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was quiet but firm. I have nowhere to go," she said. I can't live without a man." The farmer paused. Her words were strange, almost shocking. At first, he didn't understand. Did she mean she was lost and needed help? Or was it something more? The girl's expression was earnest, almost desperate, and there was no trace of playfulness or exaggeration in her tone. She truly seemed to need help. He thought for a moment, breast. Normally he didn't let strangers into his home. Life on the farm had taught him caution, and he had learned to protect his solitude. But he also couldn't ignore someone in need, especially a young girl alone in the desert. "All right," he said finally, his voice steady. "You can stay for the night, but you have to help with the chores if you're going to stay." The girl's face brightened slightly, relief washing over her features. "Psst, psst, psst," she nodded quickly. "Thank you."
"I'll do anything." They walked slowly back toward the farmhouse.
The girl's steps were unsteady, and the farmer could see the marks of hardship on her clothes and skin. She carried no bag, no sign of a home or family. She seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, like a desert spirit seeking refuge. Inside the house, the farmer offered her water and a simple meal of bread and beans. She ate quickly, but politely, her eyes constantly observing everything around her.
He noticed how carefully she treated the dishes, washing them with methodical care as if she had been responsible for chores her whole life, even if her experience was limited.
As the evening grew darker, they sat in the living room. The girl spoke softly, her voice trembling sometimes, but always honest. She told small pieces of her story, how her parents had passed away, how she had struggled to survive alone, and how difficult life had been in the Apache community after her family's loss. She didn't go into every detail, but enough to make the farmer understand the depth of her loneliness. "I've been on my own for so long," she said, her voice breaking slightly. I didn't know if I could keep going." The farmer, who had spent many years alone, felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. He understood loneliness, understood how heavy it could be to carry life's burdens without anyone to share them with. But he didn't offer platitudes. He didn't say she would be safe forever, or that life would suddenly become easy. He just listened, offering her the simple comfort of being heard. The night deepened, and outside the wind carried the scent of desert sage and distant rain. The girl curled up in a small blanket on the floor near the stove, while the farmer checked the locks and made sure everything was secure. There was a silence between them. Not awkward, but comfortable. It was a silence filled with the unspoken understanding that both had been alone for too long, and both were cautiously learning that companionship could begin in unexpected ways. Breath. As he sat down in his chair, the farmer thought about the girl's statement, "I can't live without a man." He realized it wasn't about weakness or dependence in the way it sounded. She wasn't asking for control or domination. Dask. She was expressing vulnerability, a deep need for protection, guidance, and trust. She was asking, in her own way, for someone to believe in her and keep her safe. By the time the wind had calmed outside and the night sky was dotted with countless stars, the girl was asleep, her breathing slow and steady. The farmer watched her for a moment, feeling a mix of responsibility and something unfamiliar, something like hope. He had let someone into his life, someone he barely knew, but in doing so he felt the first stirrings of connection in many years. Morning came slowly. Sunlight filtered through the dusty windows, illuminating the small kitchen where the girl was already awake, quietly tidying up. She had a natural curiosity and attentiveness, noticing the small details of farm life, the way water dripped from the spigot, the pattern of the chickens pecking in the yard, the rhythm of the old horse as it shuffled in its stall. The farmer stepped into the kitchen, rubbing his hands over his face. "Morning!" he said gruffly, though there was warmth in his tone. "Good morning," the girl replied, her voice calm but cheerful. She handed him a cup of coffee, and for a moment their hands brushed. It was a small gesture, but it carried an unspoken trust. "Can you help feed the chickens?" he asked. "Yes," she said without hesitation. She seemed eager to contribute, to prove herself. There was dignity in her willingness to work, a quiet pride in learning and participating. As they worked together through the morning chores, the farmer began to notice more about her. She was careful, methodical, and resilient. She asked questions when she didn't understand something, but never complained. Even as her body ached from unfamiliar labor, she pressed on with determination. By midday, the girl had not only earned a measure of the farmer's trust, but also his admiration. He realized that letting her stay was not just an act of kindness. It was the beginning of a change in his own life. The routine of the farm had been predictable and solitary, but now it carried a new energy, a new sense of purpose. As the sun climbed high in the sky, the girl paused to look out over the fields. Her eyes, dark and expressive, reflected the wide expanse of the desert. For the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of safety, of belonging. She didn't have all the answers to life, and she didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew she had found a place where she could rest, if only for a while.
The farmer, meanwhile, stood nearby, watching her quietly.
He understood that the choice he had made, to let her stay, was not just a temporary solution. It was a beginning. He didn't yet know how their lives would intertwine or what challenges they would face together, but he knew that, for now, he had made the right decision. As evening returned once more, the girl prepared a simple dinner with what the farmer provided. They ate together, sharing stories of small moments from their pasts, laughing at minor mishaps, and learning about each other's lives. The farm, once silent and lonely, now carried the warmth of shared presence, a quiet companionship that neither had expected but both needed. That night, as the girl fell asleep under the blanket near the stove, the farmer stepped outside. The stars were bright above, the desert wind gentle, and he felt something shift inside him. Loneliness, which had been a constant companion for so many years, felt a little lighter. The girl's arrival, unpredictable and unplanned, had brought life and movement to the quiet farm, and somewhere deep in his heart, the farmer understood that their meeting was no accident. It was the start of a journey neither of them had anticipated, a journey of trust, resilience, and the slow, careful building of a bond that might one day become something lasting. For the Apache girl, the farm was a haven. For the farmer, she was a reminder that life could still surprise, even in the quietest corners of the world. And as the night wind whispered through the fields, both of them, the morning sun bathed the farm in a golden light, and the air carried a crisp freshness that hinted at a promising day. The Apache girl woke early, her eyes bright and alert. The farmer was already in the barn checking on the animals. She could hear the soft lowing of the cows, the cluck of the chickens, and the creaking of the old wooden beams as the horse shifted in its stall. She moved quietly, careful not to disturb the farmer, and began her own tasks for the day. She carried water from the well, her hands steady despite the weight of the buckets. Each drop she poured into the troughs made a soft splash echoing in the quiet morning. She glanced at the farmer who was inspecting the fence along the edge of the property. He noticed her but said nothing, just a small nod acknowledging her presence. That nod was enough. It was quiet approval, something the girl had never received so plainly before. The day began in a rhythm of work. The Apache girl fed the chickens, swept the barn, and helped gather firewood. She asked questions as she worked, showing a genuine curiosity about everything on the farm. The way the plants grew, the schedule of the animals, the proper way to feed them, patiently explaining each task, sometimes demonstrating with his strong, weathered hands. "You need to make sure the chickens have enough space," he said, holding out a handful of feed. "They'll fight if they're crowded." She nodded carefully, spreading the grains evenly across the pen.
"I understand,"
she said.
"It's like people, they need space too."
The farmer smiled faintly. Her observations were simple but wise, and he realized that life had taught her lessons beyond her years. He admired her mind as much as her courage. By midday, they took a break. The girl had prepared a small meal of bread and fruit, arranging it neatly on a wooden table outside. The sun was high, warming their backs, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and earth. As they ate, she spoke a little about her past, though carefully. "My mother, she loved the mountains," she said softly, gazing toward the distant peaks. "She said they could protect you if you listened." Her voice trembled slightly, and the farmer didn't press her for more. He understood that some things were too heavy to share all at once. The girl had grown up in an Apache community, learning about survival, respect, and the traditions of her people. Great. She had lived with her family until tragedy struck, leaving her alone. Life on the streets and in the wild had been hard, but she had survived through resilience, careful observation, and determination. Breaths. Now here, on this farm, she was learning a different kind of survival, a quiet one, where patience, trust, and cooperation mattered more than speed or cunning. After lunch, the farmer asked her to help with repairing a section of the fence that had been damaged during a recent storm. She took the tools carefully, watching him work and mimicking his movements as best she could. Narration. Her hands, though small, were steady, and she learned quickly. The farmer noticed the way her brow furrowed in concentration, the way she paused to measure and adjust. Disband. She had a natural intelligence and care, qualities that could not be taught. As they worked side by side, the girl asked, "Why do you work so hard alone?" The farmer paused, leaning on his hammer. "It's just how life is," he said slowly.
I don't mind.
I like it. But, Sympatis, it's not always easy. Sometimes it gets lonely. The girl nodded thoughtfully.
I know that feeling,
She said, "I've been alone a long time too. But maybe loneliness is easier when someone else understands it too." Her words surprised him. They were simple, but they struck a chord. Realized that, even without realizing it, they were building a silent understanding, a bridge between their separate lives, bearing. Later that afternoon, the farmer took a break and watched the girl as she gathered firewood near the edge of the property. She moved with confidence now, her steps sure, though her hands still bore the marks of hard labor. He felt a strange mix of pride and protectiveness. She was learning, adapting, but he also knew the world beyond his farm could be cruel, especially for a young girl on her own. "Be careful near the edge," he called softly. "I will," she replied, glancing over her shoulder with a small smile. Her voice carried trust, and it was the first time he realized how much he had come to depend on her presence already. As the day drew on, they continued to work together, sometimes in silence, sometimes in conversation. She asked about the farm, about the seasons, about how he managed the land. He answered, sharing stories of harsh winters, failed crops, and stubborn animals, but also of small victories, the first bloom of spring, the birth of a calf, the quiet satisfaction of a repaired fence. By evening, the work was done. They sat together on the porch, tired but content. The girl had grown more comfortable in the rhythm of the farm. Her laughter, soft and genuine, broke through the quiet like a small wind chime. The farmer, watching her, felt a warmth he hadn't known in years. Life was different now, but it was no longer just a routine of chores and solitude. It was shared, alive, and unpredictable. As night fell, the sky turned deep purple, scattered with stars. The girl spoke quietly, almost to herself. "I didn't think I would find a place like this," she said. "A place where someone would care. I didn't think I could feel safe again." The farmer listened, feeling the weight of her words. Safety was more than protection from danger. It was trust, acceptance, and the quiet assurance that someone was there for you. He realized that, in letting her stay, he had not only given her shelter but had allowed himself to accept something he hadn't admitted in a long time: the need for connection. That night, a wind began to blow through the desert, stirring dust and carrying the scent of sage. The girl went to sleep early, her body tired from the day's work, but her heart lighter than it had been in years. She curled under her blanket near the stove, the warmth of the fire filling the small room, a comfort she hadn't known for a long time. The farmer stayed awake a little longer, walking outside to check the fences and the animals. The farm was quiet, almost peaceful, though the wind whispered through the trees and the distant mountains. He thought about the girl, about how fragile she seemed at first, and how quickly she had begun to adapt, to trust, and to bring life into his solitary world. He realized that letting her stay was not a simple act of kindness. It was the start of a connection that neither of them had expected. Life on the farm would never be the same. Rasp, she had brought curiosity, energy, and emotion into the quiet rhythm he had known for years. And though he had not admitted it yet, he felt a growing sense of responsibility, not only for her safety, but for her happiness. The next morning, the girl woke to find the farmer already up and tending to the animals. She stretched and yawned, then quietly joined him in the barn. Their teamwork was becoming natural. She remembered the instructions from the day before, anticipated what needed to be done, and even offered suggestions on small improvements. The farmer watched her and felt a spark of admiration. She was learning fast, but more than that, she cared deeply about doing well, about being useful, about contributing. By midday, they had completed chores, repaired another section of fence, and gathered enough firewood for the next few days. The girl paused, leaning against the fence post, and looked out at the endless desert. Her face was thoughtful, her dark eyes reflecting both fear and hope. I don't know what will happen next, she said softly, but I feel like I can stay here. I feel like maybe I belong. The farmer nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Belonging was not something easily earned, especially for someone who had lived alone so long. He saw in her a quiet strength, a resilience that had brought her this far, and he knew that his choice to let her stay was only the beginning of a journey. As the sun began to set, they returned to the house. The girl prepared dinner, while the farmer worked on minor repairs inside. They shared a quiet meal, talking about small things, the animals, the weather, and the minor victories of the day. Each word, each laugh, each shared glance built trust, slowly, carefully, but undeniably. Night came again, deep and still. The girl went to bed, feeling safe for the first time in what seemed like forever. The farmer, watching the stars from the porch, felt the quiet stirrings of change in his heart. The farm was no longer a place of solitude and routine. It was alive with connection, with possibility. And as the desert wind carried the scent of sage and earth through the night, both of them, in their own way, realized that this was only the beginning. A bond was forming, quiet, careful, and full of potential. Neither knew what the future would hold, but both felt the tentative hope that, together, they could face whatever came next. Days passed on the farm, and life had settled into a steady rhythm. The Apache girl had grown more confident with the chores, and the farmer had begun to rely on her presence. She woke early, helped feed the animals, and even began to anticipate what needed to be done before he asked. The small farmhouse had transformed from a quiet, lonely space into a place alive with movement, conversation, and shared responsibility. But peace was fragile. The nearby town, small and tightly knit, was filled with curiosity, gossip, and suspicion. Word of the Apache girl staying with the farmer had begun to spread. Some neighbors whispered that she was trouble, that she might bring problems to the quiet farm. Others questioned why she was there at all. It was rare for someone from her background to be welcomed without question, and even rarer for a man who kept to himself to allow it. One afternoon, a neighbor, a stern woman with sharp eyes, walked up the dusty road leading to the farm. She carried a basket of supplies, but her expression was anything but friendly. "Is this true?" she asked, her voice low but piercing. "You're keeping that girl here? Do you know what people will say?" The farmer, standing tall and calm, looked her in the eyes. "But she has nowhere else to go," he said simply. "She's safe here, and that's enough."
The woman's frown deepened.
Breaths. "Safe? She's an Apache girl. Everyone will think, well, you know how people talk." Breaths. "And you know how dangerous it can be for a girl like her." The farmer did not argue. He had heard enough of the whispers. He knew the world outside his farm could be harsh, cruel even. But he also knew he could not turn the girl away. Breath. She had come to trust him, and he had begun to trust her. To turn her away now would destroy that fragile bond, and perhaps her hope for safety. Inside the house, the girl listened quietly as the neighbor left. She felt a shiver run down her spine. For the first time, she realized that her past and her identity could be judged, even feared, by others. She had been through so much, and now she felt the weight of prejudice pressing against her, even in a place she had hoped would be safe. The farmer noticed her unease. "People talk," he said gently. "But here, you're safe. I won't let anyone make you feel otherwise." The girl nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. I'm scared," she admitted. "I've never had anyone protect me like this before." "I didn't know it could feel normal." The farmer placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's all right to be scared. You've been strong for so long, but you don't have to be alone anymore." The days that followed brought new challenges. A storm hit the farm, sudden and fierce. Heavy rain turned the dirt paths into slippery mud, and the wind threatened to tear the roof shingles off the house. The animals were restless, the chickens hiding under the coop, the horse pawing at the ground nervously. The girl had never experienced a storm like this, especially not while being responsible for helping with the animals. She ran from stall to stall, securing gates, calming the animals, and making sure nothing was in danger. The farmer worked beside her, shouting instructions over the roar of the wind. At one point, a strong gust threatened to knock her down, but the farmer caught her just in time, steadying her. Her heart raced, and for the first time, she felt true fear, but also an unexpected sense of trust. "You've got to stay close to me," the farmer said firmly. "I won't let anything happen to you." She nodded, gripping his arm as they worked together through the storm. By nightfall, the rain had stopped, and the farm was wet but intact. They stood side by side, soaked and tired, but relieved. The girl looked at the farmer, and in her eyes he saw gratitude and something deeper, a recognition of the bond they were forming. The storm passed, but the challenges were far from over. The following day, the girl received a letter from a distant relative, one she had barely known. It suggested that she should leave the farm and return to the city where her extended family lived. The letter was polite, even kind, but it carried an underlying assumption that she could not live independently, that she needed guidance and supervision. She showed the letter to the farmer, her hands trembling slightly. "They want me to leave," she said quietly. "They say I shouldn't stay here." The farmer took the letter and read it carefully. He knew that following their advice would mean abandoning the life she had started to build on the farm, and he couldn't let that happen. "This is your choice," he said firmly. "If you want to stay, you stay. You don't have to go anywhere unless you want to." The girl's eyes filled with tears. She realized that for the first time in her life she had someone truly supporting her, someone who trusted her judgment and cared for her well-being without conditions. I want to stay," she whispered. "Then you stay." As the days turned into weeks, life on the farm became a delicate balance between routine and growth. The girl was learning the ways of the land, the habits of the animals, and the subtleties of daily chores. She discovered that life was about more than survival. It was about connection, trust, and perseverance. She began to feel a sense of pride in her work, a joy in contributing to something larger than herself. But life was never without trials. One afternoon, while tending to the cattle near the far edge of the property, a young calf slipped and twisted its leg in the mud. The girl ran to help, but the calf panicked, kicking and struggling. She froze, unsure how to safely assist. The farmer arrived just in time, gently but firmly guiding her hands and calming the animal. "You've got to stay calm," he instructed, his voice steady. "Animals can sense fear. You control yourself and they follow." Breath. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Together they helped the calf back to its feet, bandaging the leg with simple care. The girl felt a rush of relief and accomplishment. She had faced her fear and learned to trust herself and the farmer in equal measure. That night she reflected on the day's events. She realized how much she had changed since arriving at the farm. She had faced storms, animals in distress, and the fear of being judged by others. But she had not run away. She had stayed, learned, and grown.
And she understood that her feelings of dependence had shifted. She wasn't just surviving. She was thriving with the support of someone who cared for her.
Breath. The farmer noticed this transformation as well. He saw the girl becoming stronger, more confident, and more capable each day. Her laughter was no longer hesitant. It carried warmth and energy. Her eyes, once wary, now held curiosity and hope. He felt a quiet pride in her growth, and a deeper recognition of his own need for companionship and trust. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat together on the porch. The sky was painted with shades of pink and orange, and the air was filled with the smell of earth and hay. The girl spoke softly, almost as if to herself. "I didn't think I could ever feel safe," she said. "I didn't think anyone would care about me."
But now, I feel like I belong somewhere. The farmer listened, a faint smile on his face. "You do belong," he said, "and you've earned it."
"Not because of anything I did, but because of who you are." Her eyes met his, and in that quiet moment, a bond formed that was stronger than words. It was trust, understanding, and an unspoken promise of protection and care. Neither of them knew exactly what the future would hold, but they both felt the certainty that, together, they could face it. The next challenge came unexpectedly. A stranger appeared on the road leading to the farm, a man who claimed to know the girl's family. He asked questions, probing, trying to understand why she was staying with the farmer. The girl felt nervous, unsure how to respond. The stranger seemed kind, but there was an edge of authority in his tone, a subtle insistence that she should leave. The farmer stepped forward, his presence calm but firm. "She's staying here," he said. "She's safe, and that's what matters." The stranger hesitated, then nodded slowly. He didn't push further, perhaps sensing the resolve in the farmer's voice and the quiet confidence in the girl's eyes. After a few tense moments, he turned and left, leaving them both relieved but aware that the world beyond the farm still carried judgment and challenges. That night, the girl sat by the fire, thinking about the day. She realized that living on the farm had taught her more than chores or survival. It had taught her resilience, courage, and the power of trust. But she had faced storms, strangers, and her own fears, and she had survived. More than that, she had found someone who believed in her when she had doubted herself. The farmer, too, reflected on their journey. He had opened his home and heart to someone he barely knew, and in doing so he had discovered a part of himself he thought was long gone, the capacity to care deeply, to protect, and to form a bond built on mutual respect and trust. As the night deepened and the stars shone brightly above the desert, both of them understood that challenges would continue to come, that the world outside would not always be kind. But they also knew that together they were stronger, braver, and capable of facing whatever came their way. And as the wind whispered through the fields, carrying the scent of sage and earth, a quiet truth settled between them. The farm was no longer just a place to live. It was a place to grow, to trust, and to belong. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert, painting the farm in soft gold and casting long shadows across the fields. The Apache girl stirred under her blanket, stretching and yawning as she listened to the familiar sounds of the farm waking. The low clucks of chickens, the rustle of hay, and the distant crow of a rooster felt like a comforting rhythm she had come to love. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly at home. The farmer was already outside, checking on the animals and making sure everything was in order. His movements were steady and practiced, yet there was a calm in him that hadn't been there before. He glanced at the girl as she stepped outside, and for a moment their eyes met. There was an unspoken understanding between them now, a trust that had grown over days, weeks, and shared challenges. "Morning," the farmer said simply. "Morning," she replied, her voice carrying a quiet warmth. She moved to help with the chores, her hands sure and capable. Breath. The farm no longer felt like work. It felt like a shared life, a partnership built on trust and care. That day, as they worked together, the girl felt a sense of peace she had never known. She thought about all that had happened since she first arrived at the farm. The nights of uncertainty, the storms, the strangers, and the whispered rumors. Each challenge had tested her courage. Each moment had taught her resilience, and each shared task with the farmer had built trust.
As the sun climbed higher, a letter arrived from a distant relative again, asking her to return to the city.
This time, however, her reaction was different. She held the letter in her hands, reading it slowly. Memories of past struggles and lost family tugged at her heart, but now she knew something she hadn't before. She had a choice, and for the first time in her life she could decide where she truly belonged. She looked at the farmer, who had been quietly observing her. "Brace and I don't think I want to go," she said softly. "I want to stay here, if that's all right." The farmer nodded, a faint smile on his face. "It's all right," he said. "You belong here, if you choose to be. You've earned it, not because of what anyone else says, but because of who you are." Her heart lifted. The words were simple, but they carried more weight than anything she had heard in years. She felt safe, not just in her body, but in her heart. She realized that safety and trust were worth more than fear, rumors, or obligation. As the days passed, life on the farm continued with its familiar rhythm, but now it carried a deeper meaning. The Apache girl was no longer just learning the farm chores. She was becoming part of the life itself. She fed the animals, repaired fences, and tended the garden with skill and care. But she also brought laughter, curiosity, and energy into the home. The farmer, in turn, shared more of himself, his stories, his quiet humor, and his steady presence. Together they had built a life that was grounded in respect, trust, and mutual care. One afternoon, a small celebration occurred, though neither called it that. The girl had managed to plant a small patch of vegetables successfully, something she had been nervous about at first. The farmer walked through the garden with her, examining her work. "You've done well," he said. "Breaths. These will feed us through the next few weeks." She smiled, feeling a swell of pride. "I never thought I could do this," she said. "But with your help, I've learned." "You've done most of it yourself," the farmer replied. "I just showed you a few things. You've learned quickly and worked hard." The girl felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in her life, someone recognized her efforts, her intelligence, and her strength, not with judgment or condescension, but with genuine respect. As evening approached, a quiet calm settled over the farm. The girl sat on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the distant mountains. The sky glowed with shades of pink, orange, and purple, reflecting off the small clouds drifting lazily across the horizon. The desert wind carried the scent of sage and dry earth, a scent she had come to associate with home and safety. The farmer joined her, handing her a cup of tea. They sat in silence for a moment, sharing the comfort of presence without words. Then the girl spoke, her voice thoughtful.
"I've been alone for so long," she said.
"I didn't know it could feel like this. Normal. I didn't know I could feel safe and cared for at the same time." The farmer nodded. "It's not easy to find," he said softly.
But it's worth it when you do.
breaths. You've earned this, and I'm glad you stayed.
She looked at him, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and something deeper, a sense of connection that had grown over time.
I didn't just survive here, she said.
He glances around in desperate. Maybe I can trust someone again. The farmer smiled faintly, a warmth spreading across his face. You can trust me, he said simply. I won't let anything happen to you. You're safe here, and you're part of this life now. That night, as they prepared for bed, the girl felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for years. She curled up under her blanket near the stove, the warmth of the fire wrapping around her like a comforting hug. For the first time, she slept without fear, without the uncertainty of where she would be or what dangers awaited her. She slept knowing she was part of something lasting and meaningful. The following morning brought a surprise. A few neighbors, who had once whispered and questioned her presence, arrived at the farm with gifts and food. They had observed the changes in the girl and the farm and had come to respect the life that had grown here. Some apologized quietly for their earlier doubts, acknowledging that the girl had shown courage, intelligence, and kindness. The girl welcomed them with quiet grace, helping with tasks and showing the farm's work with pride. The neighbors could see how much she had grown, how capable she had become, and how naturally she fit into the rhythm of the farm. The farmer watched, quietly pleased, realizing that acceptance had come not from words, but from actions and trust. As the sun set again over the desert, painting the sky in fiery colors, the Apache girl and the farmer stood together outside. The farm was peaceful, the animals settled, and the work of the day completed. There was a sense of completion, of stability, and of hope. The girl turned to the farmer, her eyes shining. I don't just feel safe here, she said softly. I feel like I belong. I feel like I belong.
Thank you for letting me stay. The farmer placed a hand gently on her shoulder.
You don't have to thank me, he said. You've brought life and joy into this farm as much as I have. We take care of each other now. That's what matters. A quiet understanding passed between them. The bond they had formed was no longer fragile. It was steady, rooted in trust, care, and shared experience. The challenges they had faced together had forged a connection that neither time nor circumstance could easily break. As night fell and the stars appeared above the desert, they went inside the farmhouse together. The Apache girl felt a sense of gratitude and belonging she had never imagined possible. The farmer, too, felt a quiet joy and satisfaction, knowing that the life he had shared and built with her was stronger and more meaningful than any he had experienced alone. The days that followed were filled with quiet work, shared meals, and laughter. The farm continued to thrive, but more importantly, so did the bond between the girl and the farmer. They had faced storms, strangers, and fear together, and through it all they had grown not just in skill or strength, but in trust, understanding, and companionship.
The Apache girl no longer said, I can't live without a man. In despair,
She had found a partner, a friend, and a safe place to belong. The farmer who had once lived in solitude had discovered the quiet joy of shared life, the satisfaction of protecting and nurturing someone he cared for deeply. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, the girl and the farmer sat on the porch, watching the sky change colors. The farm was quiet, the animals settled, and the world outside seemed distant, breathing in. The girl leaned back, breathing in the cool desert air, feeling a sense of peace that had once seemed impossible. I'm glad I stayed, she said softly. The farmer nodded, his eyes on the horizon. And I'm glad you did, he replied. In that moment, the farm was more than a place of work or survival. It was a home, a sanctuary, and a place where trust, care, and connection had flourished. The Apache girl and the farmer had found in each other something they had longed for: safety, belonging, and the quiet strength of companionship. As the stars appeared above, twinkling in the clear desert sky, they knew that life would continue with its challenges. But they were no longer alone. Together they had built something lasting, something real, and something filled with hope. And in the stillness of the night, with the desert wind carrying the scent of sage and earth, both felt a quiet certainty. This was where they belonged, and here they would continue to grow together.